Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now this is a video I didn't necessarily want to make quite as early as I'm making it right now, but quite a lot of people have been asking me to make this spreadsheet public. So I figured I might as well have a video where I explain what's happening and how it works and why, some matchups are chosen the way that they are and how it's functioning going forward. So this spreadsheet is largely intended for Battlegrounds. Obviously, you can refer to it in other game modes as well, but the functions of yes and no will be kind of based on Battlegrounds strength levels of equal ranks, and the time obviously is important because, for instance, you can obviously use Nick Fury against the Thing in some random quest and it will go just fine, but in Battlegrounds it's going to be too slow. So that's why, for instance, he has a no there. And I guess we're going to pick a random champion to kind of explain it. And the important thing is that if a champion has a yes to it, then it means Celestial 6 Mysterium player will likely be able to do that fight relatively consistently. That's more or less the skill, the quality bar. If, for instance, a Fintech can do Tiger with Nick Fury, then, 90+% of the Tiger players won't be able to do that. It's going to be no in that category. And if there is something, again, that is marked as yes, doesn't mean it's always absolutely perfect or the fastest option. It just means that it is a fight that these champions can consistently do within a reasonable time limit. If these fights go typically to 90+ seconds, 100 seconds, often there will be a no in there. Maybe sometimes category is a bit more vague. It will often depend on the nodes, on the RNG, on the AI. It is not a fight you would necessarily always want to do, but it is a fight that's relatively feasible and plausible. Additional points, if you end up losing a lot of health in that fight due to block damage or some other abilities, that will likely be no, then yes, and so on and so forth. Obviously, all of these things are subjective, and as a full-on disclaimer, obviously, I'm not an expert on all of these matchups. Therefore, I often do ask for the help of the viewers in my stream who are more capable and experienced with these champions at times as well. When I struggle at times, we do live testing towards the end of the streams. And for most part, majority of the champions that have gotten added to this spreadsheet are chosen by whoever is the juggernaut at the end of the stream, as in, whoever has supported the stream, that person typically gets to pick which champion gets added. Now, at times, I pick random champions and add them myself, and there will be also separate streams dedicated to, addition of more and more champions to this spreadsheet, because obviously we have 250 champions in this game. Realistically, we probably don't really care about 50 to 80 of them, but it still leaves a lot of champions to add here. And the way it functions is that we select the more relevant, kind of like common champions that we end up fighting against. That is also the exact reason why there is a disparity in between classes. Some of you will say that it isn't unfair, for instance, the fact that there are so many Mystic champions, which means automatically Cosmic champions are going to be at disadvantage. Even though, as a point of proof, I must say that Hercules kind of goes against that. But that being said, you might say it's unfair, but that is the reality. For instance, if you do play relatively, significant amount of Battlegrounds, how often you end up fighting mutant champions? Not that much, comparatively. Like, if you go through your entire match history and check how many Mystic champions have you fought, and how many skill or mutant or cosmic champions have you fought, there will be significant differences in between classes. Therefore, yeah, it might seem a bit unfair on the paper to have one class, be higher represented here and some other classes not so much, but that's just kind of how it is, and it's hard to deny it. And so ultimately, there are 32 champions at the moment as defenders. Over time, obviously, we will change these out. If some of these champions will become less relevant, we're going to take them out, and we're going to add in perhaps, Onslaught or Maestro when they become, troublesome defenders that we encounter at all times. And then obviously the entire spreadsheets and entire calculations will change. Now, the bright side is that the only data entry is happening on this sheet and everything else gets calculated automatically with formulas and lookups and stuff like that. But still, we can quite easily take out the champion and then add it back in. Few more things that I want to add in the future here is also defender rankings. So out of these 32 defenders that we have chosen, we're going to check, which get counted by the most amount of champions, which get counted by the least amount of champions and stuff like that. So there will also be some sort of defensive qualifier for these champs here. And when it goes to the summary sheet, basically it's obviously just the formulas, how many yeses, how many maybes, how many no's these champions get. And then obviously the class is just there for data, and formula purposes, and obviously some defensive value indicator. We can probably add something else here as well, like, recall compatibility. I think that's a reasonable thing to add here as well. High, medium, or low, as in like highly compatible with recalls, not so much. But that's something that, I still need to get around to doing. And what is happening then going forward? So effectively, I do get to transpose this entire list. But you can see this is basically the same list, except it's made it done in the way where it's easier to process it. Then we put it in the pivot table where I choose, how I sort them out. So for instance, we're sorting out by the highest amount of yeses. We can reverse it. We can sort it out by highest amount of no's or lowest amount of no's, and we can sort it out by highest amount of maybes. For instance, descending order. So, or highest amount of yes plus maybe. I think that's an important factor. Which champion has the most matchups that you could potentially want to attempt and do with it? And typically this spreadsheet will be set up for the highest amount of yeses, and as we can see, Hercules is up there. And then the last sheet is just basically kind of like a summary and sorted out by order. This is also the spreadsheet where in the end of it, after all is said and done, hopefully we will get the best value out of this, because you will be able to simply filter it by class. For instance, select a science champion, and then you're going to be able to look up which science champions, are capable of countering the most amount of fights. Then you can, for instance, select the fact that you want at least high to medium defensive value, and you're going to be left with like a clear, more or less overview with, potential rank up options or something. The more champions get added to the sheet, obviously, the more helpful it will get. I do plan on revisiting several champion matchups and placements over time as well, because several of those things are subjective. Again, I'm not putting in a yes if it's an incredibly skill-intensive fight that only, the best of the best players are capable of doing typically. Not, and what else I wanted to add here? And there are many other factors to keep in mind here. For instance, a lot of Hercules matchups are not ideal. They're not going to be like the fastest ones, or can be slightly risky. Sandman's, he can do a ton of matchups, but he's slow. I will 100% revisit this with a harsher eye once his buff goes live. We can see how he does. But you can still get a fairly clear idea which champions can be like up top and can do a ton of other matchups. For instance, out of the top 5, overall, I would say that the best result there is, aside from Hercules, that would be Juggernaut, honestly, because you need to keep additional factors in mind, like the fact that Juggernaut probably is the fastest, or one of the fastest champions in Battlegrounds, period. The fact that Juggernaut is tanky, and he's not going to be, losing half of your health pool when you make a mistake. And obviously the fact that he has a really high amount of important matchups you can do. So here, for instance, I know some people will be, angry at me. Darkhand Spider-Man. Realistically, he's a nuke, and he can do a ton of fights. He really, really can. He counters a ton of hard matchups. The problem there is, it's quite a risky, skill-intensive playstyle, and he's very squishy, which is a perfect example of what happened in the Battle Realm Brawl. Whenever we saw somebody use Starhand Spider-Man, they pretty much lost that fight, even if the matchup, was relatively decent, because there was slight error, something went wrong, or you took a bit too much block damage. Therefore, Stacking and Spider-Man scores high on a sheet like this, but it's not going to be for everybody. And therefore, we have yet again the mandatory disclaimer: do not take these sheets on the face value. Keep in mind these other external factors: how squishy the champion is, how hard it is to play, how well you play that champion, or whether you are willing to learn how to use that champion, how knowledgeable you are about several matchups, because a lot of these champions will require a bit of extra knowledge to be able to do the full range of matchups and so on and so forth. But again, despite all its flaws, as all data has, you can't have like a perfect list that answers everything. I do think this can be quite helpful to give people general gist of it, and some surprising answers. For instance, Adam Warlock is relatively high. He has relatively small amount of matchups that he can convincingly do, but he has pretty much the highest or second highest amount of matchups that he can kind of do, where it's entirely AI dependent or RNG dependent and stuff like that. There are also additional notes in the sheet 1 for several champions that I added. I probably need to add some more, but for instance, with Nick Fury, with Timely Destruction of LMD, Nick can do more matchups, which is facts. You can do a Tuma, you can do Mephistos and a handful of others, where you take damage on purpose or to speed up the fight, and then, kill off your life model decoy at proper time. Sandman is slow, so all fights are really skill intensive, things like that. I do need to add more of those notes as well. But you guys seem to have been loving this spreadsheet, therefore I figured it's, time to add it. Again, this spreadsheet will be growing bigger and bigger and bigger, so I will leave a link to it in the video description. You will not be able to edit it unless you make your own copy, but you need to remember that as soon as you make your own copy, you will not get it updated. So you will have to, come back to this video or the updates of this spreadsheet videos and grab a new link. Because I have been updating it basically daily, adding 3-4 new champions in it or something. But if you do want to filter out, add your own spin to it, or just mess around with it, you can easily do though by tapping File, make a copy. Other than that, you are again always welcome to browse it. And let me know what you guys think, what you guys would like to see. If you have some major objections about some of the matchups that I have marked in as yes or a no, and so forth, always willing to listen to feedback, and I hope you guys enjoy this sheet. See you later, guys. Bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information